Hey, welcome. So glad you're here. Today, we're going to get into something that, honestly, is a game changer for every single one of us. We're talking about mastering your mental game to really unlock your best self. We're diving deep into the playbook from Dr. Eric Potterat's incredible work, Learned Excellence. Let's just start with this idea, because it's huge. When you hear the word performer, what comes to mind? An athlete on the world stage? A Navy SEAL on a mission? Sure. But this book makes such a powerful point. We are all performers. That big presentation at work, that final exam you've been studying for, even just hitting a new personal best at the gym. These are all performances. They're all moments that matter. And here's where it gets really interesting, right? A lot of us have pretty similar hardware. Our skills, our intelligence, our physical capabilities, they might not be that different from the next person. So what's the secret sauce? What separates just being good at something from being truly great? It all comes down to the software, the programming in our heads, our mindset, our mental game, how we show up when the pressure is on.
So that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? What is that secret edge that the best of the best seem to have? Well, we are going to unpack the exact framework that answers that very question. And hey, if you're ready to learn how to apply these same strategies in your own life, do me a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps, and I've got a lot more explainers like this coming your way.
So who's our guide for all this? A guy named Dr. Eric Potterat. And let me tell you, this is not just some academic theory. This is the guy who literally wrote the book on mental toughness for the U.S. Navy SEALs. No joke. He's also worked with Olympic champions, the LA Dodgers, and some of the top CEOs in the world. So when he talks about excellence, he's seen it from the front row. So what did he find? What is the secret that all these elite performers share? Well, Dr. Potterat took everything he learned from all of them and boiled it all down into one powerful, really practical framework. It's built on 5 core mental disciplines that, and this is the best part, he says anyone can learn. This isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. And here they are. This is our roadmap. Think of these 5 disciplines as the blueprint for high performance. We're going to talk about your core values, the power of your mindset, learning to trust the process, building up your tolerance for adversity, and, maybe the most overlooked one, why balance and recovery are absolutely critical. So let's start where it all begins, the internal game. Okay, so these first 3 disciplines, this is all about the work we do inside our own heads. It's the foundation for everything else. And the journey doesn't start with what you do, it actually starts with who you are. And that brings us straight to our values and our identity. This is such a simple but profound distinction. Think about it. Reputation is all external. It's all about what other people think of you. And living for your reputation, that's a direct path to anxiety and a fear of failure. But identity, that's internal. It's knowing who you are at your core, what you stand for, completely separate from whether you win or lose. When you're anchored in that, you build a confidence that nobody can shake. And check out this story, it just says it all. The book talks about this professional cliff diver, David Colturi. He was really struggling with crippling anxiety. Then he suffers this major, career-threatening injury, and it forced him to stop and reevaluate everything. He had this breakthrough where he realized his worth wasn't tied to being David the diver. He was a person first. By focusing on his true identity, he came back to the sport stronger and more consistent than ever. It's amazing. All right, next up is mindset. And I want you to think of this like the operating system on your computer or your phone. It's the underlying software that runs everything. It's the frame through which you see every single thing that happens to you. There's another great story about a naval pilot, Katie Stanfill, who was incredibly talented, but just paralyzed by a lack of confidence, until she learned how to change her mental operating system. And it really boils down to this. A fixed mindset says, hey, I've got a certain amount of talent, and that's it. So you start avoiding challenges because you don't want to risk looking bad. But a growth mindset? That's the belief that you can always get better. You can always develop your abilities. Top performers actively choose this mindset. After every mistake, every setback, they ask one simple but incredibly powerful question. What can I learn from this? So how do you actually do that? How do you build a growth mindset? It's about focusing like a laser on the things you can actually control. So much in life is out of our hands, right? The outcome, what other people do. But you can always control your attitude, that little voice in your head. You can always control your effort, how much you're willing to commit. And you can always control your behavior, the routines you choose to build. That's your territory. That's where your power lies. This quote from pitcher Rich Hill just nails the third discipline, which is all about process. Look, the best of the best don't obsess over being perfect. They don't live and die by the outcome of one game. They learn to fall in love with the process. They trust that if they just keep showing up, doing the work, and focusing on their routines, the results will take care of themselves. All right, so you've got your identity locked in, you're rocking a growth mindset, and you're focused on the process. But what happens when life throws you a curveball? Because it will. What happens when the pressure's really on? Well, that's where our next disciplines come in. This is the resilience game. This concept is just so cool. It's called stress inoculation therapy, and it's basically what it sounds like, a vaccine for stress. The idea is to intentionally expose yourself to small, manageable doses of pressure in a safe environment. The book talks about performance expert Andy Walshe making athletes try stand-up comedy. Why? To get used to that feeling of being on the spot. So when the stakes are really high, their body doesn't go into full-on panic mode. And that leads to this huge shift in perspective. Stress is not the enemy. You know that feeling, the butterflies in your stomach? That's not a bad thing. It's actually a sign that you care deeply about what you're doing. So mental toughness isn't about eliminating stress. It's about learning how to use that energy, how to stay clear-headed, and how to perform well with the stress, not in spite of it. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, this might be the one that high achievers struggle with the most. The reality is, none of this other stuff is sustainable in the long run without real, intentional balance and recovery. You just can't be firing on all cylinders 24/7. It doesn't work. The book gives us this great way to think about it. The 6 pillars of life: work, relationships, health, spirituality, hobbies, and legacy. Now, don't get hung up on the percentages. It's just a visual. The point is that a strong, stable life is supported by all of these pillars. If you put everything you have into just one pillar, like work, what happens if that pillar gets shaky? Your whole world can feel like it's crashing down. True balance gives you stability. It's the ultimate defense against burnout. Okay, we've walked through all 5 disciplines. We've talked about values, mindset, process, dealing with adversity, and finding balance. Now, let's zoom out and pull it all together, because there is one single idea that ties this entire framework together, and it's the most important one. And this is it. Please, let this one sink in. Excellence is not a genetic lottery ticket that only a few people get. It is not some magic you're born with. Excellence is a skill. It's a collection of mental tools and disciplines that absolutely anybody, and I mean anybody, including you, can learn, practice, and master if you're willing to do the work. I just love this quote because it perfectly sums everything up. Excellence isn't about that one big heroic moment. It's about the little things. It's about what you do day in and day out. It's the habits you build around your thinking, your preparation, your recovery. That's it. That's the secret to a life of high performance. So, I'll leave you with this one question to take with you. After hearing all of this, what's one small habit, one tiny thing you can start doing today to begin your own journey toward learned excellence? Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I'll see you next time.